Let me say it again. I believe health is a right of all people. I will fight for a Medicare for all single-payer system. Second of all, right? You want to talk about rationing? You got 29 million people in this country who have no health insurance. How's that for rationing?
Welcome to the MTC Report, the news behind the news with journalist Mark Taylor-Canfield. We offer you independent voices and underreported stories about topics you won't hear anywhere else. Join us as we delve into the deeper issues behind the news stories of the day on the MTC Report.
Don't go anywhere. The MTC Report with Mark Taylor-Canfield continues next.
This is Mark Taylor-Canfield, and this is the MTC Report. I've been a writer at Huffington Post. I have a blog at Daily Kos. I'm a regular guest on the Jeff Santos Show, broadcasting from Boston nationally. And I have a column at the Capitol Hill Times. I'm here to tell you, folks, there is no such thing as privacy. Okay, the Fourth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which supposedly guarantees protection from unwarranted or unreasonable search and seizure, is not true anymore. There have been many incursions into our privacy by the government and corporations who can hack into your cell phone, can hack into your email, and can get your personal information from the internet online. So don't be fooled. There's no such thing as privacy. Those days are over. Anything that you put on the computer can be hacked into at some point. Now, you think I'm wrong? Chris Hagoyan, who is a cyber security expert, came to Seattle and had a town forum about the security culture, the security state, and how to counter it. Well, he's been pushing people to use encryption for years and years. But even with encryption, are you really safe? Now, we know about Signal and other kinds of encryption that are available. A lot of journalists use that kind of encryption. There are all sorts of special drop boxes and supposedly cyber secure places that journalists can place information. There's the Forbidden Stories project, which Reporters Without Borders and the Committee to Protect Journalists and other folks have been supporting. Even the New Yorker magazine has its own secure Dropbox. But as of 2018, at the beginning of January, we learned that there are major security flaws which put virtually all phones and computers at risk.
Tech firms are rushing to patch a security hole that is affecting billions of computers and smartphones. It's caused by two major flaws in computer chips called Meltdown and Spectre. They can allow hackers to steal sensitive data like passwords or see what tabs you've opened on your device. Researchers say Meltdown affects only chips made by Intel, while Spectre exists in almost every computing system. Let's find out what this means for us. I'm joined now by Bryce Boland from the cybersecurity firm FireEye. Bryce, good to see you again. Wow, how do I know whether one of my devices, a smartphone, a PC, a laptop, has been affected here?
Well, Christy, great question. If it's been built in the last 15 years, chances are pretty good that it's affected by one of these two vulnerabilities. Both of these vulnerabilities are basically part of what makes these computers so fast today is the capability that's been built into them, but that's it also has created a vulnerability, and that vulnerability is a bit like giving an attacker X-ray vision to be able to see into a safe and be able to see the secrets inside the safe.
Okay, I don't like that. So how do I fix it?
Well, it's not going to be you who fixes it. It's going to be mostly two different groups of people. One is the software vendors, and we've already seen Microsoft and Google and Apple making, and Red Hat, Linux, making changes in their operating system to affect one of those bugs. And that will fix that bug. But there's another bug which enables pretty much anybody who wants to conduct an attack, who can get code on your machine, a web browser or an app installed on your phone, be able to see into the secrets on other parts of the phone, other parts of your computer. That's going to take quite a long time to fix. It's going to take software as well as redesigns of the hardware that we all use.
Wow. It's going to take a patch. It's going to take software, a redesign. A U.S. government statement, it says this, quote, fully removing the vulnerability requires replacing vulnerable CPU hardware. I mean, wait, does that mean that we need more than a patch here, that we have to actually replace our hardware?
To completely resolve all of the issues, that is currently the case. There is no way that you can completely solve this problem without hardware support. It is, in fact, a design flaw in the implementation of the chips that we will use. And that is why it's going to require hardware fixes. But that doesn't mean that all hardware needs to be replaced. Only those that are going to be most at risk. And in some areas, the hardware needs to be replaced if it's going to have significant performance degradation as a result of the software fixes as well.
And to clarify, this is not just an Intel chip problem. This is a serious overall chip maker design problem, again, affecting billions of our devices. How did this come to be? How did this happen?
Well, what's happened in the last 20 years, everyone's started to use computers for lots of things, and they wanted those computers to be faster and faster. And what we've seen here is a design choice that was made in a way to improve the speed of computers has created this opportunity for a vulnerability. It's a weakness in the design that wasn't always able to be easily exploited. And now some very intelligent researchers have identified a way to take advantage of it and to be able to exploit it in a way that would make every computer using those speed ups vulnerable. So that's why it's happened. It's something that has been talked about for a number of years, but now we have real world practical examples of how it can be exploited, and that creates a big risk for everybody going forward.
Don't go anywhere. The MTC report with Mark Taylor-Canfield continues next.
This is an article from Reuters by Douglas Busfine and Stephen Nellis. Dateline, Frankfurt, San Francisco. Security researchers disclosed a set of security flaws that they said could let hackers steal sensitive information from nearly every modern computing device containing chips from Intel Corporation, Advanced Micro Devices Incorporated, and ARM Holdings. One of the bugs is specific to Intel, but another affects laptops, desktop computers, smartphones, tablets, and internet servers alike. Intel and ARM insisted that the issue was not a design flaw, but it will require users to download a patch and update their operating systems to fix. Phones, PCs, everything are going to have some impact, but it'll vary from product to product, said Intel CEO Brian Krzanich in an interview with CNBC. Researchers with Alphabet Incorporated's Google Project Zero, in conjunction with academic and industry researchers from several countries, discovered two flaws. The first, called Meltdown, affects Intel chips and lets hackers bypass the hardware barrier between applications run by users and the computer's memory, potentially letting hackers read a computer's memory and steal your passwords. The second, called Spectre, affects chips from Intel, AMD, and ARM, and lets hackers potentially trick otherwise error-free applications into giving up secret information. The researchers said Apple Incorporated and Microsoft Corporation had patches ready for users for desktop computers affected by Meltdown. Microsoft declined comment at the time, and Apple did not immediately return requests for comment from Reuters. Later, they explained that they did have patches, but Daniel Gruss, one of the researchers at Graz University of Technology who discovered Meltdown, said, quote, "Probably one of the worst CPU bugs ever found," unquote, in an interview with Reuters. Gruss said Meltdown was the more serious problem in the short term, but could be decisively stopped with software patches. Spectre, the broader bug that applies to nearly all computing devices, is harder for hackers to take advantage of, but less easily patched, and will be a bigger problem in the long term, he said. Speaking on CNBC, Intel's Krzanich, if that's how you pronounce his name, said Google researchers told Intel of the flaws, quote, "a while ago," unquote, and that Intel had been testing fixes that device makers who use its chips will push out next week. Before the problems became public, Google on its blog said Intel and others planned to disclose the issues on January 9th. Google said it informed the affected companies about the Spectre flaw on June 1st, 2017, and reported the meltdown flaw after the first flaw, but before July 28th, 2017. So the flaws were first reported by tech publication The Register. It also reported that the updates to fix the problem could cause Intel chips to operate 5% to 30% more slowly, which might explain why my computer is now working slowly after the updates from Microsoft for Windows 10. But Intel denied that the patches would bog computers down based on the Intel chips. So this is a major problem, folks. People's security was seriously compromised and may still be seriously compromised despite these fixes. Chris Hagoyan, who I talked about before, who's actually the cybersecurity expert for the American Civil Liberties Union, was in Seattle last year, and one of the statements that he made, which was sort of mind-blowing, he said that all telecommunication companies are surveillance operations, that they are mining you for as much data as possible, mainly for advertising, but that information can also be gotten a hold of by potential hackers or the U.S. government under FISA warrants, right? Quote, Intel has begun providing software and firmware updates to mitigate these exploits, Intel said in a statement. Quote, contrary to some reports, any performance impacts are workload dependent and for the average computer user should not be significant and will be mitigated over time. ARM spokesperson Phil Hughes said that the patches had already been shared with the company's partners, which include many smartphone manufacturers. Quote, this method only works if a certain type of malicious code is already running on a device and could at worst result in a small pieces of data being accessed from privileged memory, unquote, Hughes said in an email. AMD chips are also affected by at least one variant of a set of security flaws, but it can be patched with software update also, apparently. The company said it believes that, quote, there is, quote, near zero risk to AMD products at this time, unquote. Now, I don't know if I believe all of this because, we're told over and over again that our devices are secure, and then we find out that there are holes, there are backdoors, there are potential for hacking. Google said in a blog post that Android phones running the latest security updates are protected, as are its own Nexus and Pixel phones with the latest security updates. Gmail users do not need to take any additional action, according to Google, to protect themselves. But users of its Chromebooks, Chrome web browser, and many of its Google Cloud services do need to install updates. Amazon Web Services, a cloud computing service used by businesses, said that most of its internet servers were already patched and the rest were in the process of being patched. The defect affects the so-called kernel memory on Intel x86 processor chips manufactured over the past decade, the Register reported, citing unnamed programmers, allowing users of normal applications to discern the layout or content of protected areas on the chips. That could make it possible for hackers to exploit other security bugs, or worse, expose secure information such as passwords, thus compromising individual computers or even entire server networks. Now, I go back to, remember that interview that Edward Snowden had with John Oliver, right? I mean, it was sort of comedy, but Snowden said that anything that you send on your cell phone, anything that you say on your cell phone can potentially be interrupted and intercepted. So that's coming from Edward Snowden, who should know about these things. And I think that Chris Hagoyan, the cybersecurity expert who used to work for a bunch of telecommunication companies, who's now the consultant with the American Civil Liberties Union, would also agree with that assessment, that nothing is actually completely protected. If someone really wants to hack your phone, they will do it. Now, John McAfee, in a video that you can find online on YouTube, said that he could plant a bug basically in anybody's cell phone given 30 minutes access to that cell phone. This is the reality of the situation, folks. My advice, do not put anything that you think is very personal on the internet. Don't put it on your handheld mobile device. Keep that information secure. That would include your bank account number, your social security number, any kinds of identifying information that potential impersonators and identity theft specialists could steal from you. Just don't put that information on your computer. If there's any way that you can get away with buying something without using your main bank account number, I would do that. I wouldn't put that number out there. Set up a separate bank account. Put some money in there that you want to use to buy something on Amazon or other online businesses. But don't use your main bank account number or your social security number anywhere online, no matter who asks you for it. Okay, it's just not a good idea. Now back to the Reuters article. Dan Guido, chief executive of cybersecurity consulting firm Trail of Bits, said that businesses should quickly move to update their vulnerable systems, saying that he expects hackers to quickly develop code so they can use that to launch attacks that exploit the vulnerabilities. Quote, exploits for these bugs will be added to hackers' standard toolkits, unquote, said Guido. Meanwhile, at the time this broke at the beginning of January 2018, shares in Intel were down by 3.4% following the report. But they nudged back up to about 1.2% to $44.70 per share in after-hours trading, while shares in AMD were up 1% to $11.77, shedding many of the gains that they made earlier in the day when reports suggested its chips were not affected. It was not immediately clear whether Intel would face any significant financial liability arising from this reported flaw. Quote, the current Intel problem, if true, would likely not require CPU replacement in our opinion. However, the situation is fluid, unquote. Hans Moseman from Rosenblatt Securities in New York said in a note, adding that it could hurt the company's reputation. So that was a report by Douglas Buzzvine in Frankfurt and Stephen Nellis and Salvador Rodriguez in San Francisco. There was additional reporting for that story by Reuters, by Jim Finkel in Toronto, and Lahari Chatterjee in Bengaluru. Editing by Peter Henderson and Lisa Schumacher. So, there you go. That's the Reuters report on this situation. It goes back to what Chris Hagoyan was telling us here in Seattle during the town hall discussion about the security state that we live in at this time. It's not just about hackers out there, independent hackers. These flaws can also be exploited, by other agencies. So, who is really secure?
The MTC Report, the news behind the news with journalist Mark Taylor-Canfield. We offer you independent voices and underreported stories about topics you won't hear anywhere else. Join us as we delve into the deeper issues behind the news stories of the day on the MTC Report.
Don't go anywhere. The MTC Report with Mark Taylor-Canfield continues next.
You might want to update your computer. Researchers have found a set of security flaws in processors from Intel and AMD that could let hackers steal sensitive information from millions of devices. According to a report released Wednesday, the two bugs affect everything from laptops and tablets to smartphones and even internet servers from the last decade. It's left developers scrambling to find fixes, and experts say the impact will vary from product to product. The bugs, dubbed Meltdown and Spectre, both allow hackers to bypass or trick applications to get passwords or secret information. But reports say the updates to fix the problems might also cause Intel chips to run up to 30% more slowly. Experts are warning businesses to move quickly and update any vulnerable systems, as hackers are expected to develop code they can use to exploit the bugs. At this point, it's not clear whether Intel will face any financial liability arising from one of the reported flaws.
And now, with round-the-clock updates from Reuters journalists, here are today's top stories.
How hackers are hitting the jackpot at ATMs.
Quite frankly, I was outraged.
Let's face it, we've all become lazy when it comes to our personal information and the internet. We have been lulled into a false sense of security. And meanwhile, there are hackers out there who know that the information is not secure, and they know how to access it. So be very, very careful with personal information. That's my advice. Now, I know this might sound like a Luddite sort of philosophy, but it's not. I mean, I use the internet all the time, okay? And, you know, I have antivirus software and all sorts of other security measures. But really, personally, I try to avoid putting personal information out there on the internet. Doesn't matter whether it's on the cloud, on your computer, on your handheld mobile device. There are ways of accessing that information, okay? And you need to be aware of that. As Edward Snowden told John Oliver, you know, if you want to send, you know, personal, private, maybe controversial pictures, you know, on your cell phone, just know that the National Security Agency could have access to that. Anything that you say or do on your cell phones and your smartphones are available to those interested parties if they really want it. Here's a CNN Tech report on this whole story too. 2 major flaws in computer chips could leave a huge number of computers and smartphones vulnerable to security concerns. A U.S. government-backed body warned that the chips themselves need to be replaced to completely fix the problems. Okay, that is the point I really want to make here too. Now, all of the other previous reports, including the Reuters report, said that these updates and fixes are going to solve the problem. But here we go. The U.S. government-backed body that helped investigate this situation said that the chips themselves need to be replaced to completely fix the problem. The flaws could allow an attacker to read sensitive data stored in the memory, like passwords, or look at what tabs someone has open in their computer. This is what the researchers found. Daniel Gruss, a researcher from Graz University of Technology, who we quoted before, who helped identify the flaw, said it may be difficult to execute an attack, but billions of devices were impacted. You know, this is something that everybody should be concerned about. We all use computers. We all send data through email and online. And to be quite honest, none of it is completely secure. And you just need to be aware of that. That is the world that we're living in. There really is no protection under the Fourth Amendment anymore. There should be, of course. Your personal possessions and your papers should be secure from unwarranted and unreasonable search and seizure. Well, so should your computer, but unfortunately it's not. There are many people who know how to hack, and it's not just independent hackers. But anyway, you know, there's some really good websites about this. There's one called meltdownattack.com that I would highly recommend. It's about Meltdown Inspector and the vulnerabilities in modern computers that leak passwords and sensitive data. And according to that website, Meltdown Inspector exploit critical vulnerabilities in modern processors. These hardware vulnerabilities allow programs to steal data which is currently processed on the computer. While programs are typically not permitted to read data from other programs, a malicious program can exploit Meltdown Inspector to get hold of secrets stored in the memory of other running programs. This might include your passwords stored in a password manager or browser, your personal photos, emails, instant messages, and even business-critical documents. So Meltdown Inspector work on personal computers, mobile devices, and in the cloud. So depending on the cloud's provider's infrastructure, it might be possible to steal data from other customers. So this is how it works. Meltdown breaks the most fundamental isolation between user applications and the operating system. This attack allows a program to access the memory and thus also the secrets of other programs and the operating system. So bottom line, if your computer has a vulnerable processor and runs an unpatched operating system, it's not safe to work with sensitive information without the chance of leaking that information. And that applies both to personal computers as well as cloud infrastructure. So there are some software patches against Meltdown. Spectre, on the other hand, breaks the isolation between different applications. It allows an attacker to trick error-free programs which follow best practices into leaking their secrets. In fact, the safety checks of said best practices actually increase the attack surface and may make applications more susceptible to Spectre. So Spectre is harder to exploit than Meltdown, but it's also harder to mitigate. However, it is possible to prevent specific known exploits based on Spectre through software patches. Those are the ones that are known, by the way. I just want to make that clear. That's at meltdownattack.com. So Meltdown was independently discovered and reported by 3 different teams. Jan Horn, the Google Project Zero, Werner Haas, and Thomas Prescher at Cyberus Technology, Daniel Gruss, Moritz Lipp, Stefan Mangard, and Michael Schwartz at the Graz University of Technology. And Spectre was independently discovered and reported by 2 people, Jan Horn with Google Project Zero, and also Paul Kocher in collaboration with several other people, Daniel Jenkin, the University of Pennsylvania and University of Maryland, Mike Hamburg, Rambus, Moritz Lipp, Graz University of Technology, and Yuval Yarum, University of Adelaide, and Data 61, excuse me. So, you know, everyone was definitely affected by this vulnerability. You can't really tell if someone has exploited Meltdown or Spectre against you, because it doesn't leave any traces in the traditional log files. And, you know, it's unlikely that your antivirus detector is going to block the attack, because unlike usual malware, Meltdown and Spectre are hard to distinguish from regular benign applications. However, your antivirus program may detect malware, which uses the attacks by comparing binaries after they become known. So if your system has been affected, then the proof of concept exploit can read the memory content of your computer. This may include passwords and sensitive data stored on the system. So do we know for sure that it's been used? Not necessarily. And yes, there are some patches against Meltdown for Linux, Windows, and OS X. There's also a work to harden software against future exploitation of Spectre, respectively, to patch software after exploitation through Spectre. So there are several patches for that. There's the LLVM patch, the MSVC, and the ARM speculation barrier header. So your desktop, your laptop, and your cloud have all been affected. And cloud providers have also been affected. Cloud providers which use Intel CPUs and XNPV as virtualization without having patches applied. Furthermore, cloud providers without real hardware virtualization, and you security experts will know what I'm talking about there, relying on containers that share one kernel, such as Docker, LXC, or OpenVZ, are affected. And, you know, basically Meltdown is called Meltdown because the vulnerability basically melts security boundaries which are normally enforced by the hardware. And Spectre is called that because it's based on the root cause, which is speculative execution. As it is not easy to fix, it will haunt us for quite some time. Now that is, according to the website meltdownattack.com, which has some really great information about all this. Some very technical aspects of the story are available at that website. Yes, you know, you should go to that website. It'll give you all sorts of security advisories, and you will learn a lot. Okay, but bottom line, there is no privacy. I'm just trying to tell you that. Hackers can get the information that you put online or on your handheld mobile device or on the cloud, so it's up to you what you want to put there, but I would suggest that you keep your personal information private. Now, I know a lot of people post a lot of personal information on social media, on Facebook and Twitter and other places, Instagram. Probably also not a great thing to do. And if you're using an Android and you use Google or Chrome, then they're data mining you all the time for information, and they know all about you. At least they know who your friends are and what websites you've been going to and what your buying habits are. That's just all part of Google's efforts to data mine, you know, because it's profitable for them for many different reasons. But just to set it clear, there is no privacy. The guarantee to unreasonable search and seizure, according to the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, has been ignored. by the courts and by the U.S. government, and obviously by hackers who don't care. And this is the world we're living in, folks. I just want to be honest about it. So there you go. If you like this video, then please share it. Please like it. And subscribe to my YouTube channel, because we have hundreds and hundreds of these kinds of videos just telling you what's going on in the world from a very independent point of view. Nobody is funding me. I am not towing any particular political party line. I am just telling you the truth as an independent, free-thinking person in the society. This is Mark Taylor-Canfield for the MTC Report, and until next time, we'll be back.
The MTC Report, the news behind the news with journalist Mark Taylor-Canfield. We offer you independent voices and underreported stories about topics you won't hear anywhere else. Join us as we delve into the deeper issues behind the news stories of the day on the MTC Report.